Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give it a few minutes for everyone to get in and we'll begin soon. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. We're just going to give this another minute or so just to see if anybody else trickles in. So just hold tight for just another minute. Thanks a lot. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lance Ferrato, Director of Licensing and Code Enforcement here at the city. Alex Taylor is here with me. She's a management analyst for business licensing. And today we're going to talk about nonprofit organization registration possibilities and ideas and feedback and things like that. Just to let everyone know, we do not have any language drafted at this time. We have no fee schedule. We have nothing like that. This is all just discussion time and looking for your feedback. There's obviously you found this meeting, so you've been aware of the outreach that's going on. We do have a website set up at reno.gov/business license. You can go in there, a couple clicks in. Alex will share that website in the chat. You can find a survey. And if you have not completed that survey, please do. That information is going to be huge when we go to council to kind of share the public sentiment and try to come up with a path forward. So I have a little presentation today, and so I'll go through that. And then after that, we will allow for comments, questions, and like I said, just collect some general feedback. So hold on one second. Let me share this. Alex, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. Okay, so a little background. I've been at the city about 5 years, and this topic has come up multiple times over the years, but it kind of came to a head last April when council requested a presentation. The concerns that have come up in the past are generally surrounding planning review, zoning restrictions, and then we've touched on public safety as well. I'll get into the specifics of those in a couple slides here, but that's what kind of got this moving. So at that point, I brought back a presentation, just kind of giving the basics on what a nonprofit organization qualifies as, how the city treats them, how they get treated in other jurisdictions, and in the kind of discussing the problems that council had brought to our attention and how we can how we could come up with a solution. So they directed me to go and get some community feedback and then to return with them with some possible language. As I said, this is all about feedback. This is all about we'd like your comments to kind of pull everything together and so that I can go back to council and have a decent discussion on what needs to be done, what public thinks needs to be done, and then how council wants to navigate that. So obviously, you're either part of a nonprofit or you're very tied in. You know that they're generally formed to benefit a specific cause or society. They kind of fill the gaps where the government can a lot of times. And because of that, they're exempt from business licensure in many registrations in many jurisdictions. Municipal code says that they are exempt from a business license as a certified tax exempt entity. We have a couple other exemptions, obviously charitable, religious, things like that in our current code. So this would be the direction we're heading if council was to choose so, would be to be a registration, just so we know where the business is or where the entity is, what they're doing, and how we can make sure that the city planning doesn't conflict with that. So right into the city planning concern. Basically, in the past, there have been some incompatible uses that have been approved. For instance, a cannabis facility was approved right next door to a rehab facility because it was basically not on the map. Nobody knew it was there. It was unmarked, and so these things get approved, and we have to sort through that after the fact, and it becomes very difficult. Surveys can be difficult as well. There are many license types in the city that require a survey: package alcohol, cannabis, some casino placements have to have certain distancing requirements set. And when the surveyors go out, they can't necessarily find these businesses or, again, these entities, these groups that aren't marked or aren't advertised. And we understand, for good reason, a lot of these want to be confidential, and we respect that. It just becomes a problem when we try to find a suitable place for an approval of a specific use. The safety concern comes in with existing buildings. If you were to come in as a nonprofit and build your own new facility, new building, everything would be inspected, approved. You'd get a certificate of occupancy. We wouldn't have such a concern with that. But an existing building, when they move in, when a business comes into an existing building, we send out the building department, fire, the health department. They all look at things to ensure that there haven't been any remodels, there are any repairs that need to be done, so that we know that the building's safe. When a nonprofit takes over a building like that, we don't necessarily know because they're not required to come in. We do have a voluntary registry process, but there's nothing to hold anybody to it. We ask to people we ask voluntarily if they'll come in. If we discover a nonprofit, say, hey, you can register, you can be put in our system. We won't come back and ask what you're doing in here. We can kind of be aware of what's going on. But we only have about 317 of those in our system of the 2,000 plus nonprofits in Reno. And of those 317, we're not sure exactly how many of those are accurate because we don't have an annual touch point with them. They could have been gone for years. We would never even know. Those are just what we have accumulated in the system. So as you can see, we don't really have a lot of that information at current. As far as other jurisdictions, some require licensing, some require registration, some don't require anything at all. I've looked all over the western side of the country, and it's all over the place. There are many different systems put in place to capture these and to register these. And then there are others that just say, we don't care, we're going to move it along. We're happy with what we're being provided with these entities, and we don't want to hassle them. There's others that just say, we just want to know. We've had a lot of people in these previous conversations say it would be great to have a registry where we kind of knew what nonprofits were available to the public. So again, jurisdictions handle it all differently. Some require inspections, some don't. And if they do charge fees, it's generally speaking a very minimal fee, just like a processing fee. So if you haven't seen the survey, these questions I just pulled straight off the survey, and I just put them on here just to start as a discussion point. Should NPOs be required to register? Should a fee be applied? If so, and should they be proportionate to the size of the NPO, or should it just be blanket across for everyone, or not at all? And if required to register, should the inspection fees be imposed? And if so, should they be applied at a reduced rate? A couple other things that we asked about were, if they were required to register, how do you think this would affect their ability to serve the community? What sort of impacts would they see? And if the city does not require it, how do you think it would impact the city's ability to plan effectively based on what I was telling you with the land use concerns? If required to register, what sort of confidentiality should be afforded? And again, this is back to what I said about respecting the what the entity is providing and their need to be confidential for the safety of their stakeholders. And so we understand that there are things like that, but I'd like to know if there's any other concerns that we would like to bring up as well. So with that, that's all I have for information. So now in a second here, we'll open up for discussion, but I want to let everyone know, again, I'm emphasizing that survey. Alex is going to put the link in the chat and as well as the website and then our email that we're collecting all this information on. blcode@reno.gov is the email you want to submit any of your comments to. If you'd like to just give us a written comment instead of filling out a survey and get really specific, then we're happy to collect that as well. All this information is going to go into, we're going to gather it all up. I'm going to put it into a report. I'm going to take it back to council. I'm thinking probably at the beginning of the new year, after we've had a chance to get through the holidays and sort through all this data. And then we will have a discussion with council and see which direction they want to go. Maybe they decide not to move forward with anything. Maybe they decide to move forward with some sort of structured format. Your input is invaluable. And once this report is agendized, I'll make sure that this group and everybody that's attended these sessions knows that it's on an agenda so that you're able to come and give public comment if you feel the need. So let me stop sharing this screen. And we'll just go straight into questions and comments. And feel free to just raise your hand and Alex will bring you across.
All right. I'm gonna do hands first and then we'll go through the chat. So Mary, go ahead and unmute yourself and then you can begin speaking.
Thank you. This is Mary Bryant. I work with N4 Neighbor Network of Northern Nevada. And I know that currently the state requires, a yearly filing of the officers and directors. And they also have a requirement when you do that to talk about your solicitation and make sure you know how to, what's legal for solicitation. Is there a way to just use that? I mean, we already have to register every year with the state. Is there a way that you guys could share that information? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. We have looked into other opportunities like the state having their registry. There are other websites out there that catalog the nonprofits across the region as well. The biggest problem that we found with these is that as discussed before, confidentiality can be big. And so home addresses often get used for these nonprofits, especially the small ones or PO boxes, things like that. So we may know that there is one that exists, but we may not know where they operate out of. I know that not one size doesn't fit all. We've had this discussion 2 other times this week, and a lot of good points have been made about what about people that don't operate out of a commercial space? Do we need to know? There's obviously no zoning concern there, and there's obviously no safety concern because people aren't coming in and out like they would a commercial space. So those are things that we've taken note of, and I think they're big points to be brought forward to council. But to your point of the registry, it doesn't necessarily help us all the time with the physical location of a place. So that's one of the downsides of that of going that route.
Thank you.
Yes.
All righty. I don't see any other hands raised, so in the meantime, I will go to the chat. Jill asked, is it true that churches will be exempt from any new business licensing requirement and or fees?
Thanks for that question. At this time, I don't have an answer to that. I don't know what council's desire to do any sort of a registration at all. I do know that the religious aspect of this in code and in state law and in federal law is very specific. And it's basic. There's a big freedom of speech and freedom of religion implication there. So the churches may just have to get on a list just so we know hey, where they at. I really don't have a solid answer for you at this point on that. It's something that will be discussed, that will be put into my report, and it will be brought up at council.
Awesome. And then Shane just wanted to make a comment. I think it was related to the state registry, but he wanted to say feels like it's reinventing the wheel. And then also asks, does this register only apply to NGOs incorporated in Reno, or does this apply to any NGO that operates in Reno? As an example, we are based in Story County.
Yeah, that's a good point too. When it comes to business licensing, which I don't want to compare the NPOs to the business licensing, but that's the structure that we have in place. So that's what I'm familiar with talking about. But in a business licensing aspect, if you are out of city, but you operate within the city and you do business within the city, then you have to be registered. In a case like this, the primary concerns being zoning regulations and safety concerns. I can't see that just off the top of my head, and again, I don't want to speak for council. I can't see that the ones that are based out of city would necessarily need to be registered. But that again is going to be a talking point and a decision point for council. But thank you for bringing that up again, because I think it is important.
Okay, Jill says, thanks. All categories of nonprofits should be held the same requirements, even if there's a different fee schedule based on income and or size. And then I'm going to head back to the hands raised. Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself and you begin speaking.
Thank you. So I think I understand the reasons why, the three reasons that you suggested why we need this. But what if you have a nonprofit that doesn't, like you said, have a physical space? They do for instance, Scenic Nevada, we do all of our stuff online, and we don't meet any of the criteria of the problems, and we do file with the state. So would you consider exempting the smaller nonprofits, that don't cause planning and community development any problems, don't cause a safety problem? I mean, there's absolutely no reason. You have the information from the state. So I was just wondering if that could be considered.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. I think it's definitely a consideration. It has to be because, like you said, it doesn't impact those major concerns that council had. So it's going to be a focal point of the conversation. I think is, again, one size doesn't fit all. Some places are small and don't have a physical location. Some are operating from out of the city. Some are gigantic and do completely different. They have a business model. They're just massive in nature. So yes, I agree with you that needs to be a consideration, and it'll be noted for sure.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jane, go ahead and unmute yourself and you begin speaking.
Hi, I'm with Lahontan Audubon, now known as Northwest Nevada Bird Alliance, and we are similarly to Scenic Nevada. We have no physical location. Everything, all of our education outreach is is done through, we simply go to different schools or places and provide educational experiences for kids, and plus our adult and bird walks, that sort of thing. I again, we aren't somebody who would impact your planning issues or safety issues or any of those sorts of things. And we do register with the state. So I don't know exactly what you would get out of us other than money, if you charged a fee.
Sure.
I don't know that we don't have anything other than a post office box, because that's,
Yeah.
or a storage shed. We do have a storage shed, but that's about it.
Yeah. No, I think you made great points. And you're not alone. Like I said, over on Monday and Tuesday, we had quite a few comments that are, to the same tone. So yeah, I appreciate you chiming in on that. Thank you.
Okay, Sue, go ahead and unmute yourself and you begin speaking.
Hi. I'm Sue Boone, and I'm from the 1701 group, formerly known as Assistance League. We do have a large presence. We operate a thrift store. We, like everyone else, are registered with the state. And I can see the merits in registration because we've talked a lot about having a single point resource where we could look at the other nonprofits, and we partner with a lot of other nonprofits as it goes. We also put well over $1 million back into this community every year. And my primary concern with this is the thought of a sliding scale, because I don't understand, frankly, why it should cost us any more to register than someone who doesn't have a physical presence. And we are a 100% volunteer organization. We pay no CEO, nothing. And it's a little disconcerting to consider that some of the money that would go into our programs is going to go to the city. And I would just like, I mean, obviously you haven't thought about the scale yet, but I would just like to put my 2 cents worth in that if you do decide there's going to be a registration fee or whatever, that is something that you need to take into consideration, what that nonprofit is giving back to the community and what that fee would do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point as well. The whole sliding scale concept just came up, for your knowledge. Just it came up at the last meeting, and I think one of the council members said, they were kind of just brainstorming and saying like, oh, well, we don't want to charge. Well, what if we charged some and not others, and the bigger ones maybe could help the smaller ones, and so it was just a discussion and a brainstorming. And that's why that survey question was there. And so I think we've gotten some good feedback from people like yourself explaining why that wouldn't be equitable. So thank you.
Okay, Blake, go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Blake Pang, President and CEO of United Way here in Northern Nevada. I want to thank everybody for being on here. As many of you who are on here saw, we are convening, in essence, hundreds of nonprofits across this area on this issue. We had a call earlier this week to discuss it. I do want to make note for everyone that all of these comments, you are not alone. On our call, it was completely unanimous that we do not support any type of required required registration and specifically a fee structure of any type for nonprofits operating in our area. A lot of the points that were already made, we do want to echo those. Nonprofits do provide significant services in our region that government is either unable to or not willing to provide. So we fill a lot of the gaps that are there in our community. And for us to now incur extra work on them by requiring registration and possibly requiring a fee, it feels like a tone deaf solution to a problem that is affecting not many organizations in our area. You highlighted one situation. I would argue that it should have been on the shoulders of the cannabis facility to survey their prospective neighbors, and especially if it was next door, you would have hoped that somebody from there could have knocked on the door and asked. In addition to that, I just want to be clear that if there were a year or two to kick something like this off, it couldn't have been a worse year to choose. This year, as many of you know, nonprofits have been hit by multiple losses across both federal and state funding. roughly 30% of nonprofits in our area lost significant funding. Some of them all the way up to about 70% of their revenues were nearly instantly lost over the course of the last 6 to 9 months. So for the city to be considering something like this and possibly going through with it, it feels like it's the straw that would break the camel's back for a lot of these nonprofits. Um, even if it weren't a huge fee, it would be something that a lot of volunteers, board members would feel less compelled to do what they do if they're now being told that they need to take yet another step and write another check for um, what most of us in the community feel are not the right reasons. So I would hope that we can come to a more um, common sense approach to some of these issues that have cropped up, and I would believe that they're limited issues. Um, but I would ask us to have more reasonable conversations and engage more of the nonprofits, not just in a fairly anonymous online chat, but provide us an opportunity to speak live to our elected officials specifically on this issue. And I would offer up United Way as possibly a helper to organize some of that, just because we are already organizing those conversations offline, and we're the organization that also organizes the nonprofit day of the Capitol every session. So we'd be happy to do that. I think that we can get somewhere where it solves a lot of the city's problems and possibly creates a solution that helps everyone and not just certain people. So we would love to do that, and we we would just love to help you to be a solution that's common sense and helps everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. That's a lot of good info there. I saw somebody pop in the chat there. I wanted to know, repeat your name and organization, and it's Blake Pang, and it's United Way, correct?
Correct. Yeah. President and CEO of United Way.
There you go. Great. Yeah, you make great points, and I really think that as far as getting your message across to council, I think when this goes back to council with the results of the survey and results of the comments and these outreach meetings and all the emails and everything else, I think that's going to be an excellent time for anyone and everyone to come face to face with council and say those exact same things, to express your concerns. I will say that this, I've done, I won't say a lot, but quite a few ordinance changes, and this is probably some of the best engagement I've ever had. Over these 3 days, we've had almost 100 people show up to participate, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you'd be surprised. We don't get very many people that want to participate in these kind of things, so it is a lot. And then when we go and look at our survey, we have over 200 responses right now, which again doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. I can tell you from experience, when we've gone through and tried to change portions of the code, we've gotten like next to no response. So I really appreciate this group sharing the word with all of the other organizations and putting it out there so that we can really get the most information that we need. So I appreciate it.
And thank you to both of you. I know you're in a little bit of a tough situation as well.
No worries. Happy to be here. You're on mute, Alex.
Thank you. Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself and then you begin speaking.
Okay, thank you. I was listening to the last two speakers, Sue and Blake, and one of the things that I thought of as they were speaking was, have you considered, would registration and like a $50 fee across the board for anybody, not based on income or anything like that, not try to earn money from us, but try to just do what you want to do to solve your problems. Just register like the state does. We pay $50 a year to file our articles of incorporation, our annual list. And that has all the information in it that you would need, I would think. And have you considered that? Just as
Yeah,
just a
no,
flat fee?
that's a good recommendation. It is on the considerations, and just so you're aware, the voluntary registry process that I talked about earlier today, it's $25. We've been doing that forever. That was the way to capture these entities in the past, was to just take an application fee, basically enter the information into the system and put it away. Unfortunately, we never had any sort of like renewal or any sort of like resubmission of information so that we knew you were still active or you were still in the same place. But yeah, your recommendation or your idea of just a flat nominal fee is definitely on the table as one of the possibilities. Absolutely.
And I didn't even know that you had a volunteer registration, and we've been doing this. We've been in since 2000, so 25 years, and I
Yeah.
didn't even know there was a volunteer registration, and I've never signed up, and I'd gladly do that. And I feel like that would solve your problems. And if there was a list of nonprofits in town like that people could look up, that might be a service to the public. And I don't know, I just feel like that would be the way to go, and it would be something that we wouldn't oppose that.
Sure. Thanks, Lori.
Jillian, go ahead and unmute yourself and you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Jillian Hogan. I'm from TheaterWorks of Northern Nevada. I don't think it's really a secret that arts-based nonprofits are one of the most underfunded. A fee, depending on the amount, would be very detrimental to our financial picture. We do actually have a physical location in the heart of downtown Reno that we struggle to keep open and have since we moved into it in 2019. So I think that what I believe it was Brent from United Way said about the way that it would affect the nonprofits, especially due to all of the budget cuts that we've endured over the last year, would be severely detrimental to some of us. So I do hope that the amount of whatever fee is decided, or the way that that fee is decided for nonprofits, would be considered based on the size of the organization, and other factors that would affect us. Because I think there are larger nonprofits that even though they may make more money, that means they're putting more money into their programming and communities. I think that's something we definitely need to consider, because these nonprofits are filling gaps that are not being served or provided by the government or other organizations that are not nonprofit, for-profit businesses. So I definitely hope that there's a way that we can figure out how to make that equitable if there is a fee that's assessed, because some of us nonprofits could potentially perish under too high of fees and strict guidelines like that.
Thanks for those comments, Jillian.
Okay, Jamie, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Hey guys, Jamie Chapman with Midtown Reno. I just wanted to hop on and kind of, just agree with what everyone's saying. I think the idea of a fee would not work for most nonprofits, especially a small one. Sorry, I kind of am losing my voice, or I'm getting it back. We're like super small and struggle to do absolutely everything. So any kind of fee would be really rough for us. Also, just to reiterate, of like the more money that a nonprofit makes, the more that they are giving back to the community, and I think that should really be considered. I had no idea that you could voluntarily register a nonprofit, and I'm not for sure like if that is something that we would be open to. I think that if we were informed of like what that entailed, that would be. I think it sounds like most people were interested in like a citywide database of nonprofits and what they offer. And so I wonder if we could try that route first, potentially just voluntarily register. And then if churches are not going to be considered in something like this with having to register, I don't really see a point. It doesn't complete your goal with planning and things like that. And It just seems very, very unfair.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, you bring up things that have been talked about internally as well. So again, we're going to put all this into a report, and we're going to try and come up with some routes that council could take, but mostly it's going to be for discussion. And I think that everybody being there and sharing their piece is really going to hammer home what's important to these groups, and we can go from there. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, Joy, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Thanks so much, Joy with Girls on the Run. Lance, thanks for, we appreciate the opportunity to share. As you can tell, the nonprofit community is pretty passionate to serve, and we want to be community minded. So I appreciate you opening this up for our discussion. I'm glad that we showed up for you more than other groups have. Can you review just one more time so we're all clear the timeline and when you might need us? I know your office is going to be doing some additional work and looking at the surveys and things, but really, when should we be focused on coming to speak, things like that? And then also, is there another way? Will we just get notified? How will we get notified? What should we watch? We don't want to miss any of this. So kind of share the process once more, and then what we should be prepared to keep an eye out for, so we don't miss any meetings, agenda items, etc.
Yeah. So basically, I'm shooting for January, February to be in front of council to discuss this. The way our staff reporting works, we can't, like right now, the December agenda is basically like on the edge of being complete, right? So to get into January is going to be doable, but I may just go to February so we can really give this the attention it needs and make sure that we have all the information we have. So I'm thinking late January, early February is probably going to be on an agenda. And what I'm going to do is anyone that participated in these Zooms and anyone that's asked to be on our stakeholder list, we're going to put it out and we'll send an email, some sort of notification out to say that we are going to have that this item will be on the agenda. And now is a great time to either submit written public comment or to show up and give verbal public comment, face to face with council. So there will be more media on this as well. We'll probably put it out on social media as well, or even like an email blast like we did on this last one to make sure that everybody knows when it's going to go so that no one misses it.
Okay, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick chats that were actually submitted quite a while ago, just so you can answer these ones, Lance. Kessa asked, for organizations that serve vulnerable populations, additional local registration could be increased risk of NIMBY, not my backyard, reactions. Slow down essential services as well as make safe places less confidential. Think domestic violence and trafficking shelters. How do you plan to combat that?
Yeah, I don't know that we can combat that. That's one of the major concerns as far as the confidentiality. We would have to make some specific. We have to work with the city attorney's office and really find out what we can and can't disclose. Obviously, there are statutes around donor and operating. Anyone that donates to nonprofits can't be disclosed. I know that for sure. There are a couple other provisions in state law that say certain information is private. We don't want to out anyone. We know that these domestic resource centers are very important, and they're confidential for a reason. So that's a huge concern as well on how that would be handled internally. If we knew where the place was at, we need to be able to make sure that it doesn't get out. So that's on the top of my list as far as like how would we handle something like that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, and then Jillian asked, why is it a high priority to know about the nonprofits when we have many unlicensed businesses operating in the city? Is getting nonprofits registered the best use of resources?
So good point. We have in the business license department, we have a whole compliance team. We have four compliance officers and a supervisor that are out on a daily basis looking for unlicensed businesses, as well as collecting renewal fees and making sure that businesses that are properly licensed are in compliance. These nonprofits came up as a direction from council that they wanted us to look into. So not to say that it's I wouldn't say it's a waste of resources. I think that we can do these two things simultaneously. If we were to go forward with a registration process, it would be just like another, finding another like unlicensed business. We would say, hey, you need to apply. Here you go. I do see the optics from your point of view, but yeah, this is direction that we got from council to go forward and to look into this issue. So.
Okay, and then last one I'll read for now. As a private business and starting a nonprofit, it seems the current regulatory licensing would trigger mandatory regulation of organizations under the proposed new license with the city. It seems I'm spending hours updating my businesses with the city and state. The amount of time and energy is simply adding another task for my nonprofit. I agree with the comment that it seems redundant. I would ask to keep the current system to avoid us charging us more to help the community.
Thank you.
And I will go back to the hands raised. Jane, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Hi. Oh, shoot. I can't get the phone to stop ringing. Anyway, and I'm sure it's some kind of a call. Anyway, Jane Burnham from Northwest Nevada Bird Alliance. I agree that a registration, minimal registration wouldn't hurt. It would be to the advantage of the of all nonprofits to be able to know what other groups are doing. Just like the lady from the former Assistance League said, it is really, we do a lot of work with other nonprofits, and knowing that we're in the same is really important. And at the same time, I do appreciate you needing to safeguard the areas that need to stay confidential. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheyenne, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Hi there. Thank you guys so much for the week of spirited conversation. I think if we want to get nonprofits in our community out and galvanized, you guys did it. So thank you for bringing us all together. I think what this past week has shown, hopefully you guys and us, is that one, we're really opposed to a fee. But I feel like the idea, instead of being extractive and taking, is that you've exposed a really big need in our community to build a database of nonprofits and build an idea of who's serving, how they're serving, and where they're serving, so that when we understand as a nonprofit community who's doing what, so we can start collaborating and doing cooperative work together, and two, so that our community knows who's out there doing this work. And so I think instead of being, extractive from this community, how can the city come in and organize and be a value add? There are so many organizations like TMT, the Community Foundation of Northern Nevada, who have beautiful databases of nonprofits, but they're not shared and they're not open to everyone. And so you guys being a galvanizing or unifying voice in that would be amazing. And I know we're trying to raise money for the city. And so I don't mean to add more to your plate, but I worry that asking for $25, $50, it doesn't matter. Hearing the amount of infrastructure that you have to build for the business license side, having a staff, having a person going out after delinquent businesses and everything, you're going to have to build that same infrastructure for nonprofits. And then you're going to have to fund that. And the nonprofits are going to have to do that. So that slippery slope is just alarming. So I don't know. Thinking about how do we holistically do this together. Community Foundation does have funding. If there's a way that TMT could join, AHA projects can also be a part of kind of that database building. I think you've exposed a very, very important missing, right? Like a missing tool in our community this week, if anything. I know you guys came at it from a different, you want a different outcome, but yeah, I think you've exposed a really, really beautiful vacuum.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. I think there's been a lot of people that have once somebody said that, that it would have been nice. It would be nice to know who they can refer people to and who's working in the same direction they are, or who's working in parallel ways. Like, I think everybody kind of heard that and was like, wow, yeah, that would be helpful. So yeah, if anything, maybe that's what this results in. Again, it'll be up to council's direction if they even want to do anything. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, Trevor, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Trevor Macaluso. I'm the CEO of the Eddy House, and I have 4 major concerns related to this proposal. One being, I think that it's not the city's role to create any kind of database for these resources, because even if you went to a low fee or no fee, as the previous speaker said, you're going to have to build the infrastructure, which means now the citizens of Reno are having to cover that increased cost through taxes. So one way or the other, we're still paying for it. I think second, and importantly, you've given a couple of examples in the presentation, but to echo what Blake said, there's not a great demonstration by the city to demonstrate the need for making nonprofits register and having a business license-like structure. I think, coming to us with, or even coming to council with a lot more examples and hard data on the issues that persist and why this is necessary would definitely be more open to the nonprofits about why this would be happening. But I think the second is, or the third point that makes me more concerned is giving the city a structure in which they can tell nonprofits, no, we're not going to license you, or we're not going to let you open another location or open, provide services in this community. That seems really unhelpful when it comes to so many of us that are doing such great work throughout the city, no matter what our sphere is. And then my fourth and final concern is, in that same vein, like a business license, would nonprofits then have to apply for this kind of registration for every single location that they operate, including, there's many domestic violence and shelter organizations that house people in apartments all over town. So they have to register for each and every single one of those locations. Again, that becomes super onerous and difficult for us to manage. It would not be worth it to provide services.
Thanks for those points. That last one was one that hadn't been brought up as well. So thanks for bringing that to light. I appreciate your comments.
Okay, Blake, I've unmuted, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, everybody. One more note, and thank you, Trevor, and Cheyenne for speaking up just recently. To the point in terms of the voluntary registration that you seem to already have in place, maybe that's the common sense approach, is for us to push that thoroughly out to the nonprofits who have sensitive populations who are at risk, and letting them know that there is this registration tool available that will help to avoid some of these circumstances. I know that United Way and many of our partners, and I would imagine that all of our friends who are also funders in the community would be happy to champion that with our various partnered organizations, which would hopefully cover most of those types of organizations. I think that could be a common sense approach. I do want to make note that in terms of a registry, we are also in conversations with Truckee Meadows Tomorrow, Center for Nonprofit Business, and many others to take the initial listing that TMT created, and I know that they were on a call a few days ago, created and kind of take it to the next level. So if that is truly, one of the main and primary goals of this, I think we could solve it by partnering with somebody who's already done a lot of the legwork, and just give them the resources to take that initial list to the point where it can be useful for not just for this particular circumstance, but for all the circumstances that you just heard earlier. With it would be helpful for those who are doing a certain type of work to know who their partners and friends are in the community who are also doing that, so that they could team up. I think we could turn this into a win for everybody, is what I'm saying. I think we can take this from a place where, yeah, you know what, there is a little bit of acrimony right now. I think that we've touched some nerves, and Cheyenne pointed that out. And we can turn this into a win. So I hope that they consider this.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. That's a great idea. I think that's going to be something that will be best heard by council. In person at public comment. As far as like, there are organizations out there that are willing to take the lead on pushing the voluntary registration and getting that information, captured. Again, at the end of the day, there's going to be people that don't want to do it, and that's what we faced, at least internally. We don't push it when we catch on to some. We think there's a business somewhere, and they say no, we're a nonprofit. We say, oh, okay, that's good to know. You can register with us if you like. It's not required, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Most times they don't, obviously, because it's not a requirement. You don't want to have to fill out the paper and pay the money. So I understand it's not the law. It's not required. So people don't do it. But yeah, I think like you said, if you feel that yourself and other groups like you have the ability to push that message out and to get more of these registrations in, maybe that's a reasonable path that council is willing to take. So I think expressing that to them would be huge from your perspective.
All right, Sue, go ahead and unmute yourself and you begin speaking.
Hi, this is Sue Boone again from 1701. And I would just like to echo what several of the previous speakers had to say in terms of both the need and my real question to start with is, you haven't made a very compelling case for what the Reno would do with this information if they receive it. And my concern is that if it's a required kind of registration, that it's going to sit there and it's not going to do anyone any good except you collecting a registration fee. I really like the idea of someone, if TMT would take the lead, and we pushed a voluntary registration with a cooperation between the city and TMT or whoever took the lead in this. We, for one, we didn't know about voluntary registration, and we're a pretty big nonprofit. And I think that those who are not interested in this database and the idea of knowing who else is heading in the same direction you are and who else you might be partnering with or looking for redundancies and so on and so forth, they would probably want to register. So if we could put together, I've been saying for years, we need this because we would like to look at gaps and redundancies in the areas that we serve so that we can better put our money into the community where it is most needed. And, I'm really glad that this has brought out the whole discussion of this. And maybe it's not a requirement. Maybe it's something that we, push for that reason, that this is what we can do for nonprofits. But I'm not sure the city's the one to take the lead, and that maybe is expressing lack of confidence. But if you get, Truckee Meadows to do that, or, some other overarching organization, I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to go through some more of this chat here. We do have a few minutes left. Mary asked, could the city make it a responsibility of the business seeking a business license to survey their neighbors as part of their business license?
Yeah, it's definitely it's something that could be considered. The problem being is that most of these businesses, at least now, the two specific examples I have, the law wasn't in place at the time, and so the law is in place now. But we do still run across things where surveyors, because the licensee is not going to do a survey themselves. They're generally speaking, they're going to hire a legitimate professional surveyor so that they can have some more assurance, less liability, things like that. So the surveyors are the ones that also had issues with this and just not knowing, because some places are unmarked and unidentified and for a specific reason, like we've talked about. So yes, it is something that we could put on the onus of the operator. At the end of the day, I think it still fall back on the city, because we're the ones approving the license. And if we can't figure out who's there, or if we don't think anyone's there, and then we approve a license, then it falls back on us. It is a very tricky, it's a very tricky situation. We have thought about that, saying like, let's put the onus on the business owner, let's put the onus on the nonprofit, let's put the onus on the city. And there are holes and gaps in every one of those avenues. So yeah, I appreciate the question. It's on our minds. Thank you.
Awesome. Jane made a comment. She agreed that a database is very important. And then Jill asked, between state registration 211 and the city's optional nonprofit registration, do we really need something new? Perhaps we can encourage more nonprofits to use a $25 operational registration instead, and perhaps the city can look at development code problems and the corresponding development notice issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of just tails off the question or the answer I just gave before. There's possibilities that language in land development code and business license code could be fine-tuned to capture some of this. There's always going to be there could always be gaps in that method, but it's definitely on the table, and it's a consideration. So yeah.
All right. Couple more. Leslie said, if we consider using the current 211 system, that is a great opportunity to pull the data that is needed, and that she truly thinks that the city does not need to take this on, nor should they. Again, this will create a huge challenge in many ways and possible unintentional consequences. I believe the nonprofit should self-identify to ensure that the building issue that was mentioned by the city would be addressed. And Leslie had also asked in Q&A, can you explain why we would want to impose fees to those of us who have a limited budget?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to that. I mean, nobody's going to want to impose fees to somebody that can't pay them. This was, like I said, this is at the direction of council to look into possibilities. They never said that they would absolutely charge. They didn't say they wouldn't charge. They didn't say they would require registration or not. This is just an information gathering session, and I think that the sentiment is fairly strong that fees are not acceptable to most of these organizations. So that's going to be a point of emphasis in the report.
Awesome. And then I think we already answered this, but Paula asked, since we've already registered with the state, why is it necessary to re-register with the city when all they have to do is get the list from the state? Just want to put that out there.
I think that question was answered earlier. It goes back to the state lists that we have. We don't necessarily know where they're at because of the fact that the information that they file with the state and even with the federal government when they file their forms doesn't always show a physical location if they have one. They will put a mailing address, a home address, because their areas are confidential. So we don't necessarily know where they're at by using that list. It's a great start, but we don't have it doesn't complete it.
Awesome. And I think we have time for one more. Blake, go ahead and unmute yourself before you begin. I just want to let you know several people in this chat said thank you for your comments.
Sorry, I realized that was me and Blake are under the same link. This is Daniel. I'm with you, Blake.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Daniel.
Sorry, no, I realized that after I was like, wait a minute, I think she's talking to me. So sorry, Blake. I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus there. But I just wanted to make a quick comment. I do the marketing and communications at United Way, and so um, a lot of what I do is kind of bridge gaps with community members, with nonprofits, with for profits. And one of the biggest sentiments I've seen, especially with a lot of the funding cuts that have happened throughout the course of this year, is that every single time a nonprofit tries to do something or tries to innovate in a way they're thinking, there seems to be more and more barriers being placed. I go back to like what Trevor was saying, to where it creates an environment to where we almost feel the need to jump through hoops just to try to do the impact or make the impact that we're trying to have in the city. Like I think about United Way as a convener. If we are trying to convene with other nonprofits, what we don't want is to create an environment to where there's more and more and more barriers being placed. And even like I love that everybody's like, oh yeah, let's create a database. Let's get a list of all the nonprofits. But correct me if I'm wrong here, but it doesn't feel like that's the main purpose or that's the main goal of what the city is trying to create. You started this call by saying that, there's a cannabis facility going in next to a rehab center. And I think Blake hit it on the head, where it shouldn't be the nonprofit's responsibility or even the city's responsibility to figure out who goes where. If the city's deciding who can be in a certain location, that should be on the organization or on the business going in to actually do the work to figure out who's around them. Because yeah, that's a terrible look. But all in all, I am of the belief that if a nonprofit is going to make the biggest impact, we need to be removing barriers that are allowing us to have the impact and not creating extra steps that in a lot of cases we don't have the manpower to do. We work with organizations that are all volunteer and they have one full-time person and they're not even getting paid. They're just volunteer being given a very small living allowance that already don't have time to do anything. And then we're asking the extra registration, we're asking the time allotment. It's going to take time to actually get approval for things. So if you have a really good opportunity to move into a building, it'll take time for you to do that, just because you have to apply for business licenses and government, for no fault of their own in a lot of cases, just moves super slow. And so my biggest concern is I would hate to see nonprofits struggle because we're creating barriers and not removing them to allow them to actually make the impact in the city that they could be making.
Great points. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Okay. Lance, it looks like I have one more hand raised. Are you okay doing this last one?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as the Zoom won't shut us down, let's let everybody in.
Awesome. Lori, go ahead and unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Thanks. The last speaker just elicited this thought in my mind, and that is, and this is just one personal situation. And for Scenic Nevada, we did have a physical location, and it was in my husband's law office. So he had his city license and all of that. So, how would you handle? There's going to be weird things like that because nonprofits do what they can to get out there to the community, and they do different things that a normal business doesn't do. And so, without actually renting space, we gave it as our physical address. Before the pandemic, we used to have our board meetings in the conference room, etc. So we used the building. We didn't really hold like any kind of event where the community would come into the building or anything like that. But so how would you handle something like that where there is a business license for the business and the nonprofit has just got a space there?
Yeah, I think that, and again, if my only comparison is to say like how a business license works, if you're another business within, sharing space with another, then you get a business license. If it's just a mail stop, maybe it's a little bit different, and there's no type of advertising. But these nonprofits, again, I don't want to continue to compare them to business licenses. There would have to be different circumstance or different set of rules for these places, because again, if you're not letting anybody in there, you're just using a desk in there. Maybe it's something that the registration itself is fine and there was no inspections. There's probably a million scenarios we can look at here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, at this point, I'm not sure I have enough information on the direction the council wants to go to be able to create those scenarios and go through and apply what the regulations would be at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay,
and last comment I'll read here is Chris says, feels like a feels like a business license, a building permit, and SUP issue, a for-profit issue that is being levied on the nonprofit group, treating a symptom but not the problem.
Yeah, that's a fair take.
Yeah, and that's all I've got here, Lance.
Okay. If Alex, would you mind just pasting the survey link again in the bottom of the chat, just so nobody has to go searching for it? I will remind everybody that if you want to write an email, if you just want to, expand on your thoughts, blcode@reno.gov is the email address. And then through our website, through reno.gov/business license, you can go click through about 2 links right in the middle of the page. On the first page, it'll say take you to code updates. And then on the next page, there's a little accordion file of nonprofit registration, and you'll be able to see the survey in there. You'll be able to see these meetings. All 3 of them have been recorded and they'll be posted there. If not by the end of this week, by early next week, they'll be up. And then we will constantly update that page as well. And as I mentioned before, we will send this stakeholder group messages of some sort of email and try to put some out in the media as well to when we go back to council. And I'd really encourage everyone to do the survey, submit emails, come to council, voice your opinion, voice your solution. I really appreciate all the engagement. Like I said, this is the biggest or the most amount of engagement I've had in any code project so far since I've been here in the last 5 years. And I appreciate all of your time and your comments. So if you have anything else for us, please shoot us a message. Otherwise, thanks a lot for coming.